I'm Nurse Jessica Seitz, along with Nurse Erica. We're Nurses Uncorked, the podcast that takes nursing facts with nursing comedy and makes a little cocktail out of it. Hey guys, welcome back to Nurses Uncorked. I've got Nurse Erica here, and it's me, Nurse Jessica Seitz, and we've got another guest with us today. We just keep having guest after guest lately. I just don't want to be alone with Erica anymore, I guess.
See how it is.
We just keep finding people. But no, we love having guests on. And today on Nurses Uncorked, we have Matthew Garvey. I was just asking this lovely gentleman how to introduce him. And evidently he is a nurse that does multiple things. Matthew has a background in emergency room nursing. Works bedside currently, but also is I like saying nurse entrepreneur. It sounds so like French and fancy, but does dabbles a bit as a legal nurse consultant as well. So we're going to get into all sorts of different topics with Matthew. Matthew, thank you for joining us on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Have you ever met Matthew in person, Erica?
Yeah, we go way back. I'm going to tell you how we go back, but before we forget, may I present you with Snoop Dogg's newest wine for the cocktail of the week. I was just, lured in by the label. I'm a huge Snoop Dogg fan, believe it or not. I love him.
It looks like Taylor Swift in her Reputation era.
It does.
You
It
find
does.
a way to make everything about Taylor Swift.
Look, I've got my Swift Kelsey shirt on today, ready for game day. Cheers, Erica. Cheers, Matthew.
Cheers. And cheers to Snoop Dogg. Love him. I think he still lives here in Vegas.
Does he really? I did not realize that's where he was living.
His son's like an NFL player now, I think. And he graduated from the very, very expensive private Catholic school here that has like an amazing football team. And he used to go to like football games there. Everyone said that he was really nice and his wife was not.
Did Martha ever come with him? Because aren't he and Martha like really good friends these days?
Yeah, they're like that. Yeah, no, never saw Martha.
Yeah.
But anyway, the cocktail of the week, Snoop Dogg's 19 Crimes Cali Gold. And it's actually really good. It's not a Moscato, but it's really good. I could drink this. So we met at an unlikely place and became quick friends. Tell everyone where we met the first time.
Yeah, so we met in Nashville at the courthouse during RaDonda's trial.
Oh,
it was the first time that Erica and I ever got to meet, and it was so funny because at the time I was super busy and wasn't watching any social medias, and everyone was like, "That's the nurse Erica," and I said,
"He's
okay.
Like who?
Who is that?" So we actually started talking, hanging out there at the trial, sat together through the trial. I actually was that for sentencing, Erica, that I got you the pass because you were out?
Oh, that was for
that
sentencing.
Was the last day, right?
Yeah. But we met during the actual
for
trial.
Sentencing. The actual trial. Yeah. So yeah, met several times, got to spend a week together in a very unlikely place, but everything happens for a reason. It brought us together, and we've been friends ever since. So
we got to know each other during the week of the trial. He had no idea who I was, but I was immediately impressed with him. He's very intelligent, as you guys will see. But I will say that the highlight, if you can call it that, of getting to know Matthew was the day of not the sentencing, but the day that RaDonda was found guilty. And we were there, we heard it, and of course, everything that went along with that. We understood the impact on the nursing profession. And you and I and a friend of ours named Kelly, another nurse, actually went out to a bar and had lunch immediately after the guilty verdict and just kind of like decompressed about everything that we had been through. And I will never forget that. That was like a moment in time
It was definitely a moment in time, and it was a moment where, we all understood what had happened and what this guilty verdict meant to RaDonda. And I think we just needed as a group to process what this looked like for the profession, because it truly had a broad reach. As we've seen, right? We've seen way more criminal convictions of nurses since that day, despite the fact that the prosecution said it was not a war on nursing. It was not going to have a
Right.
broad reach. It was an isolated incident. All the things that the prosecution would tell you,
Yeah.
um, to bring a
And
good light to themselves, especially out in a political year. I won't say that he was running for election again, but
mm,
in a
yeah.
political year, all the things you say to bring great light to you. It was difficult. That was a humbling moment, I think, when we went and sat, had a drink, and just said to each other, what does this look like? Where are we at? Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
How do we
And
support RaDonda in all
for
of this?
you it was personal too. Do you want to tell them why?
Yeah, sure. So RaDonda and I are actually really good friends. RaDonda and I went to nursing school together.
Oh,
So we grew up essentially as nurses together, graduated nursing school, went our separate ways, but we're both still in the Nashville market, essentially, and then came back together. I worked at Vanderbilt. I still work at Vanderbilt. I'm still on their payroll there. And so I got to work alongside her as a nurse, and see the amazing nurse that I grew up with function at the bedside, and how loving and caring and intelligent and competent. And, we had physicians who testified on the stand that that's who they would want taking care of their family member had they been in that ICU. And I still say to this day, she can provide care for me, my family, anyone I'm close to, because she is one of the most amazing nurses that I've known and have worked with. It was an unfortunate event and unfortunate consequences, but an amazing nurse. I will never discredit that. She says to me every now and then, I think I even told you this, Erica, after it was over, she said, it's really going to be hard not being a nurse anymore. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. An RN license does not make you a nurse. You're not a licensed nurse, but you will always be a nurse because you have the heart of a
Yeah.
nurse.
that's true.
Um,
Yeah.
and you've lived that out, right? You will never, I never want to hear you say that you're not a nurse. You will always be a nurse. So
Yeah.
um, it's been interesting, and it's been interesting to navigate that. I'm very proud of her now. I'm sure
Me
we'll
too.
get into, or I'm sure you have gotten into on many of your podcasts about where she's at now and all the things that she's doing, but advancing the profession, being the face of patient safety, of just culture, of
Yeah.
safe medication practices. Again, she's still a nurse. That
Yeah.
impact lives on, and so I'm super, super proud of her and all that she's doing to advance the profession.
Matthew, were you guys, you and RaDonda, working together at that time that the actual incident occurred, or it was prior to that?
So it was prior to it. So she
Oh,
and I had worked together. That the incident happened, I think, in 2017, and I had worked at Vanderbilt in 2016. I left, and then I came back to Vanderbilt right almost immediately before her trial started.
okay, got it.
So
And so, as much as you are comfortable saying in your position, how do you feel that Vanderbilt handled that situation and how it played out?
yeah, I will. I'm perfectly comfortable answering that. I think that one of the things I saw from Vanderbilt in that time, especially after the verdict was read, um, they held town halls. I don't think that's a secret. I think that some of those were even leaked, even though they were private meetings, but I think they were leaked. Um, and so I really appreciated them coming together to try and explain what had happened. There were some very tough questions. Erica, you and I think talked about that back in the
Yeah.
time, where staff were very open with the president of the hospital, the legal counsel for the hospital, the chief nursing officer of the hospital, and asking very open, honest, raw questions. Um, and one of the things I've said a lot, because a lot of people have asked me that, right? What does this look like at Vanderbilt? People were mad, staff were mad. Um, One of the things that I will say that Vanderbilt's communicated, and that put things in a different light for me from that perspective, was we've never been here before. A TBI investigator pulled up in front of the hospital, essentially came in and said, you know, we have a subpoena. We're taking all of these documents. Produce them now. And it's for a criminal trial. And so what I heard our legal counsel say was, you know, I knew certain things were protected civilly, but we've never had a nurse who was tried criminally for an unintentional error, right? We've had nurses who were tried for diversion or, you know, DUIs, those kinds of things where there was a little bit of discovery and there were just, they may have asked for an employee file or something of that nature. But we had never had an incident where a nurse had an unintentional medical error, medication error, and now there's a criminal trial. So I think it was difficult for Vanderbilt to navigate that. And as you and I've talked about, as I've talked about at Vanderbilt, I'm not saying anything that I haven't told them. I think that it was a learning experience, and I hope it was. I hope we've grown from it. I think there were times that we probably should have stood up for her when we chose to stay seated.
Yeah.
I think there were times that we should have spoke up for her and for nursing in general, and we chose to stay silent. And honestly, I wasn't privy to those conversations, so I'm not really sure what place that comes from. I hope, and what I cling to is that comes from a place of unknown, right? A fear. We've never been here before. We don't know the waters that we're navigating. But I hope moving forward, as this happens again, we've learned from that. And we will see the response that we expect from a top 20 hospital in the nation or a level 1 tertiary academic medical center. As you know, Erica, I'm the one who asked the question and said, we've seen every major university hospital and every major nursing organization release a statement except for Vanderbilt. Are we going to get that?
Yeah.
And then it was released the next day. So, you know, I do think that there was a lot of learning, a lot of growth. And it's very unfortunate that a nurse had to go through that without that support. But what I can tell you is that she had a tremendous amount of support from bedside staff.
Yeah.
So there was an army of bedside nurses.
Since we're talking about the RaDonda Vaught trial, I would be remiss if I did not ask you, because you have an LNC, a legal nurse consulting business, and you are actually in law school in addition to being a nurse. Please give us your expert opinion of the expert nurse in the RaDonda Vaught trial.
Yeah. I knew this was going to come up. How did I know this was going to happen?
Of course.
Maybe because I made comments about her as she walked down the hallway in front of me. I was very disheartened at the legal nurse consultant. And here's why. She has been doing legal nurse consulting for many, many years. I do not personally know her. I have reviewed her resume because it is readily available online. Many legal nurse consultants who are used in higher profile cases have been a nurse for many, many years, sometimes removed from current practice, which makes it difficult to give an expert opinion. However, the jury doesn't know that. And as you know, Erica, you and I have talked about the artful coaching that an attorney gives a testifying expert. For example, in the trial, they ask her, RaDonda has a bachelor's in nursing. And so they asked the legal nurse consultant what her highest level of education was. And she said, I have a bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a lie. She does have a bachelor's degree. It's in communications. It's not in nursing.
Right.
But the way the question was asked was, what's your highest level of education?
Right.
And it's a bachelor's, just not in nursing. I think what was most disheartening to me is, as a practicing bedside nurse who devotes their time and energy into offering a product that is exceptional, right? And I am that product. I am a bedside nurse who will do any course, will do any certification that I can do to further my knowledge for bedside practice. Hearing a testifying expert say, when they ask, do you have any other credentials that would qualify you to be an expert? And she says, oh, I have ACLS and PALS.
I forgot about that.
So you have the basic minimum certifications that any nurse who works in an ICU should have. Got ya.
Right.
Expert level right there. I was disheartened with her. I really was. A lot of what she testified to was not current practice.
Correct.
You've heard me say this analogy many times. I like to speak through analogies. She comes from a smaller hospital. When you look at her resume, she did not work at a level 1 academic tertiary medical center. Medicine looks very different inside a large hospital system of that nature. So when you compare what RaDonda's practice to what practice Donna had, I think that was her name.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare their practices, it's like comparing a banana and a lemon. They're both yellow fruits, but they taste very different when you bite into them.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think that was difficult. I will say, I wonder, and I don't know this is complete speculation, if they struggled to find a legal nurse consultant who would testify against her.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because a lot of what I do when I look at a case is if it's not a case of integrity, if it's a case I don't believe in, right? And I do not believe in RaDonda's criminal case, right? I think there are consequences for her actions. She knows that. She accepted those. I don't think there was criminal action that she should have been tried for. So I would not have testified against her.
You're right. Maybe that's all they could find. But they
And
were
so
like, sold. You're it.
exactly. I think we scraped the bottom of the barrel, but she's done many, many cases. She's been admitted as an expert many times, so she knows what to say. And she said it. She showed a little passion. I think that RaDonda's lawyer got her a little angry at times, which I love to see.
She was very defensive.
I loved it. But I did say, for everyone on the podcast, as she walked by me and the prosecution walked by me, there goes one of the largest disgraces of nursing you'll ever see. So I'm very vocal. I'm very vocal when it comes to that.
Speaking of very vocal, I believe that's your TikTok handle, is it not?
It is. And I wish I could have posted on there recently. I need to get back to that, on all the downtime I have. But yeah, it is my TikTok handle, a very vocal nurse. And that comes from being told that over and over and over again through my career. You're too vocal, or you're very vocal, or we can't have you being that vocal.
Are you guys related?
Right? Exactly. So I chose to wear that badge of honor, a very vocal nurse. I'll take it. I'll wear that.
Yeah.
It's Matthew Unfiltered.
It is. Listen, if he gets really unfiltered, if he had another glass of wine, we could talk for hours.
We could do one of those podcasts. Maybe we'll have Matthew on a second time and just giggle and share stories, some crazy stories.
Yes.
That would be great.
I would love to. I love this flight idea. I love to drink. I'm a nurse in law school. What two professions go hand in hand when it comes to drinking, right?
All right, so everyone mail me and Nurse Erica a bunch of bottles of wine, and we will sample them. Right, Erica?
Okay. I'm down.
On the next Nurses Uncorked. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a bad idea, does it? Any wine?
Erica, I'll give you my address if you want to forward some of those.
Right?
I'll give them to you on the cruise coming up. I'll bring them for you.
Oh, yes.
Because you're going to be an educator on the Nurse Blake cruise in April, right?
I am.
What are you going to be teaching?
Yep, I'll be teaching 3 classes. So one of the courses, gosh, I don't have the official titles in front of me, but we'll talk and paraphrase here. So one of my courses will be the first 10 minutes of a chest pain presentation. So all of the clinical information you can gain within the critical first 10 minutes of a patient who presents with chest pain. The second course, that'll be an hour long, just a lecture. The second lecture I'll be teaching is navigating EMTALA. So I have quite a bit of experience in patient transfer, patient logistics, and the legal side of that, what that looks like. Also, we'll be sharing some stories of EMTALA violations that I have been involved in. I did not cause, let's preface it with that. I was not the cause of the violation, but have either had to investigate, be in some shape, form, fashion. And then my third is actually a panel So it's an hour lecture, and it is the legal aspects of nursing. And then we'll have the second hour, a 5-person panel where we'll do a Q&A session. Anyone in the audience can ask questions and the panel will answer them. So I'm super excited. Last year I went on his cruise, phenomenal cruise. There's nothing like being surrounded by family, right? It's 3,000 nurses on a boat. It's amazing.
I was
So
calling Erica. I was trying to prepare her for it. I'm like, it's so much fun because like everybody can relate to everything. Like it's a bunch of people coming together that are living the same, stresses. And it's so nice to see a group of nurses cut loose. I told Erica, you will never see it. Literally, it's like Nurses Gone Wild. These women
it is.
have well, I don't want to say just women. Okay, let's not say that. But all women and men cut loose, and it's a good time. Like nice.
It's amazing.
Fun and not stress.
And it's such an accepting culture, right?
Yeah.
Every specialty is celebrated, and I think Blake truly pours his heart and soul into that. If you are a practicing nurse, you deserve to be celebrated, and that is such a great culture to be a part of when you're there. He tells us on the employee side of things, right? I now work for him, and he tells us on that side of things, these are our consumers, and we will celebrate them. They deserve to be celebrated. And he says that in almost every meeting that we're in. So I love being a part of that culture and a part of this, essentially this empire that he has built to celebrate those who oftentimes are not appreciated.
Well, I have to tell everyone, I'm going to embarrass you for a minute, because you're not just Mr. Smarty Pants educator, and I've never told you this, but I play this weird game in my mind where I think, okay, in an imaginary world, if I were president of the US, which clearly that would never happen, but if I was, and I had to pick like my cabinet of trusted advisors, who would be in my cabinet? And I don't think I've ever talked about this. Yes, you would be there for the comic relief and to keep me grounded.
I need Jessica to be the press secretary.
That would be good. I could see that. You'd be a good press secretary.
Yes. I need to hear her tear a anchorman apart, to be like, did you really just ask me that? No.
Why are you wearing that outfit? You look stupid.
In my cabinet, there are several people. One would be my son. He's a genius, literally. One would be my good friend Marion Weber, who you guys may have heard me talk about. She is a nurse that exposed corruption at Peace Health. And one would definitely be you, Matthew, because you are one of the smartest people, definitely one of the smartest nurses, but one of the smartest people that I know. When I was trying to wrap my mind around this very vague concept recently, I immediately thought, I'm gonna call Matthew because I know he's gonna have some important input on this. And so I really respect you, and you're going to be part of my cabinet in my mythical world.
Yes, and listen, I'll vote for you, honey. Have you seen what we've been introducing as candidates?
Right, I know.
I would vote for a clown at this point.
Right.
Anybody else? Oh, but no, thank you. That means a lot. You and I've had, and I don't think I've ever shared this with you. You are also one of my biggest inspirations because you and I have had many conversations where you say things that I can't.
Yeah.
And we will talk. I'm sure we will talk about that throughout the podcast. But things that I can't say or can't do, I know that you can and you will, and you're not scared to do that. And I love how you, Nurse Jessica, multiple nurse influencers, have a fierce of an advocate you are for the profession, and then also for the nurse, the person right behind the title. Because I see you fight for people on a regular basis who are going through so much injustice, whether that be in their profession, in their life, whatever that may be. So you're also a huge inspiration to me, and I will be honored to be on your cabinet as long as Nurse Jessica is press secretary.
Right now, I hear the music. Did I ever tell you you're my hero? So if you're new to this podcast, every week we interrupt rudely in the middle at any moment, because that's what we do. And we go into the problem of the week. It's something that a nurse has sent in, or I hate that I always say nurse. Anybody in healthcare worker, somebody has sent us a problem that they're asking a question and they want to know the answer.
Problem of the week.
I actually presented this question to you earlier this week, Erica, and I don't think you had tons of input. So I'm going to read it here. Maybe Matthew has some advice for this lovely lady who sent me this question. I didn't know how to answer it. And so, of course, me like a ding dong, I'm like, I'll ask Erica. So I messaged her today and I told her it would be the question on the podcast. So to stay tuned. So, all right, here we go. So I work for the University of Maryland Medical System. There's a Facebook group for Maryland nurses. One nurse who works for my system said that if you work at multiple facilities, they are changing pay without permission and averaging the pay between the facilities. Some of them are paying less. Like one hospital offered me $38 while I was making $42 at another location. We all kind of felt like this may be a law violation. I did work at the two facilities, but had the same rate, and one was unionized, so that would never fly. Also, wouldn't they have to account for hours cumulatively between facilities so that you're making OT? If they are just adjusting pay based on other, or if they're adjusting pay based on other facilities, I don't know the answer to this question.
Yeah, so I'm gonna definitely want Matthew's input on this, but I will say that always with these questions, my first answer is you need to check the individual laws for your state because labor laws differ state to state. Overtime laws differ state to state. Some states don't even address overtime at all. So you need to do the homework for your specific state. Now, of course, if there's some of the facilities are unionized, that's going to go by their collective bargaining agreement. There's no way around that.
Right.
My instinct is that for the non-unionized one, if you are an employee of an overarching system that works at multiple facilities, I would think, yeah, they probably have the legal right to average that pay. It's messed up. They shouldn't do that. They're taking advantage of you. But I would think they're not breaking any laws. But what do you think, Matthew?
So I'm going to preface this with I'm not a lawyer.
Yet.
I agree that they need to look it up in their state. Right, yet. 3 more years. Just 3. That they need to look it up in their state. I think that you're correct. And is there an overarching structure? So, for example, if you work at, I'm just going to use Vanderbilt because we've already talked about them. If you work at Vanderbilt, you're an employee of Vanderbilt University Medical Center, no matter which of the 5 adult hospitals you work at. Okay. So if that's the case, then you have essentially one organization. And so your contract, regardless of which of those 5 hospitals you're with, your employment contract with them is a blanket across all 5 hospitals.
Right.
And what they can do is they can reserve the right to say, if you're going to be working in a secondary job code, then you're going to get paid a different set amount of money when you're in this pay scale versus, or in this role versus in this role. But you have to agree to that, right? They can't just say, oh, I'm going to decrease your pay. You have to know that up front. They have to be honest and transparent about that. Averaging pay, I don't know that is completely legal or okay, because you didn't agree to have your pay averaged. So
right.
and let's say you're going to work at the parent hospital today, and then tomorrow you're going to work at the regional campus, but it's a separate entity and you have a separate job code, then you're not going to get overtime because they're set up as separate entities.
Right.
Right. Like it's like working a second PRN job, even though they're both owned by the same overarching company. I don't think I could fathom or come up with a way in my head where it is okay to take the salary of both and average them together to come up with a new number, if that's how I'm understanding the question, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if they've already, like you're saying, agreed to these rates, and then
right.
And that's what they've agreed to and signed, saying that they're going to come on, and then to all of a sudden just have them switch it on them does not seem right. Now, the whole part about one being unionized and the other's not, I think definitely puts a wrench in things. It makes it a lot more complicated,
well,
you know?
Well, and that makes me think that they're separated.
Yeah.
that makes me think that they're separate entities, because if they were not separate entities, both should be unionized, but the union should cover the system. If
Right.
they're not separated,
necessarily
it's like separate entities.
There's hospitals under the same system and organizational umbrella that have some unionized facilities and some not. That
And
happens.
some not.
Yeah.
That makes it complicating, though, because what you're saying is the rate of pay could be, they negotiate for that. Like the union comes up with certain things that the other facilities that don't have a union representing them would have a different
Right.
pay. So that makes it tricky. I would think. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and I've never worked at a unionized hospital. I'm in the Southeast. We don't have
me
those over
neither.
here.
You could.
So I'm
You
just
could.
gonna
You could.
I'm gonna keep this stoic face on at the moment. We don't have those. They don't exist here. However, you can always ask your union rep, right, of the larger hospital.
Sure.
Yeah.
They would be able to help you navigate those waters as well, to say, especially if they're averaging it and it's affecting your pay at the unionized hospital, your
Right.
union rep is definitely going to be involved and be a source of knowledge there, to be like, either, yes, this is okay under your contract because, or no, this is grossly not okay, and here's how we're going to change it. So look up those laws, talk to your union representative at the hospital that you're at, and see what that is. The averaging pay is what gets me. I understand having two different pay scales for two different jobs at two different hospitals. I don't know how the averaging comes into play.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that concludes the problem of the week. So I was going to take over the next question, because that's what I told Eric I was going to do, because I was ready. And
let's do it.
This is piggybacking off of last week. We talked about workplace violence, and we talked about nursing burnout, and all those things that kind of all go hand in hand, unfortunately. So one question I was going to ask you, Matthew, is can we talk about any of your experience about being physically assaulted by a provider? Is that something you're able to talk about? I'm
a provider, not
Sure.
a patient, a provider.
I'll protect his anonymity, and I won't say his name is William Vaught, and he practices at the medical center in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And if you Google his name, that you may find his mugshot on Google.
Ooh,
I won't say any of that to
Here
protect his anonymity. However,
as I'm Googling
so
that
yes,
right now. No.
Exactly, and share screen. It did not end well. It did not end well for me, actually, not for him. I don't know that there were any consequences for him. So to just tell you a little bit about this story, I had a patient came in. Patient was elderly, in their 90s, told me they had some dizziness, shortness of breath for a little while. I go to hook them up to do an EKG. It's an obvious stimming. I think it was an inferior, if I'm remembering correctly. And so as I turn around to hit the staff assist button in the triage room, which is no larger than really a closet, it's tiny, the patient takes a huge agonal respiration and codes in front of me. And
of course.
And they're on the EKG, right? So I can see that they're in VFib. I can see that. So I start CPR in the chair, because we're in a closet. I can't get them into the floor. We get on the stretcher. Provider runs out, which I don't know why. I didn't need him. But anyway, he runs out and checks her pulse. And he's like, she has a pulse. So I'm checking her carotid. Another nurse of mine, another colleague of mine, is down on the patient's at their femoral artery. And she looks at me and I look at her and I'm like, I don't have a pulse. She's like, neither do I. And I'm like, I'm starting CPR. So we continue CPR. We get to the room. She's still in VFib. We're doing the whole ACLS protocol. We've shocked her 3 times. The provider says, give her amiodarone. One of my other colleagues pulls out a vial of amiodarone and draws it up. And I said, the initial dose is 300. That should be 2 vials. Can you go ahead and drop a second vial? And the provider says, they're 90-something years old. It's not going to matter anyway. Just give them 150.
Well, that's not very nice.
Oh, correct. And the patient's family was at the bedside.
Oh.
So I said, okay, I was just trying to follow ACLS protocol. But if you want to do 150, so we give 150, we shock her a 4th time, we get him back. She has a heartbeat. She's in a 3rd-degree heart block with a rate of like 30, 35-ish. My nursing colleague who is over on the defibrillator says, would you like for me to pace them? Mm-hmm. And the provider says, no. And I said, okay. Would you like us to give atropine? It typically is ineffective with a 3rd-degree heart block, but we can try. And he said, no, set me up for intubation. Well, as we know, if you're an ICU nurse or an ER nurse and you go to intubate someone who already has a low heart rate, you may stimulate their vagal nerve. And we're back where we started. She's now coding again because she has no reserve. And so we continued to do the resuscitation. And I said, and I will concede that I said it as a statement versus a question. I said, I'll give her a half an amp of epinephrine. She responds well to epi. I said it as a statement, but phonetically, it sounded like a question, right? Like, well, I'll give her a half an amp of epi. She responds to epi. And his response was, you won't give her anything.
Oh.
And so I looked at the charge nurse across the room from me and I said, this obviously is not productive. I'm going to go back to triage. I'm going to dismiss myself from the situation. So an hour later, I come and bring him an EKG on a 20-something-year-old who came in with anxiety but had chest pain. And he said, you need to come with me, young man.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I do? And so he took me to a locked part of the emergency department.
Oh, boy.
And initially, the door was behind me. So, like, the exit was behind me and he was in front of me. Got in my face, started yelling, screaming, told me I would not question his orders ever again. That I don't talk to him that way, that I don't have a medical license. And I said, I'm not having this conversation with you at this moment. I will be happy to talk about anything that I said and justify anything that I said or did, but you will not yell at me. You will not get in close proximity to my body, and you will not cuss me. I'm a grown man.
Right. Back off.
Like, we can have professional conversation. And he goes, then he chest bumps me and says, well, what are you going to do about it?
He chest bumped you.
And
what?
No, chest
yes.
bump.
He did not.
Yeah. And so then I said,
bring it
I
on,
swear.
buddy. Bring it.
I swear. Chest bumps me and says, what are you going to do about it? And I thought to myself,
oh, he was antagonist.
well, I'm going to fight you.
Yeah.
I'm going to fight. I've never been in a physical altercation in my life, but now I see red, right? And I said, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. And I turned around to walk away, and he ran around and got in front of me and pushed me backwards to, like, back into the room.
Oh my God.
In my face, like nose to nose. I thought, and here is a common mistake of most nurses, that the hospital would have my back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah, that was your first mistake.
So then he used his, right? So then he uses his body to block the door and won't let me out. Every time I try to go around him, he's chest bumping me. And to finally get out of this, I had to yell for help. I had to yell for the charge nurse. When she came around the corner, he like stepped back and looked around the door, and I was able to get around him. Called administration immediately. I think this was at like 3 a.m. in the morning. Called them immediately. My director said, I will support you in pressing charges if you would like to. And I said, here's the second mistake. I trust that the hospital will do the right thing in taking care of this.
No.
And so I didn't call the police. I should have. I should have sued him civilly for assault and battery, but I didn't. Learning lesson, right? Look back at that now. So this happened 3 more times. It wasn't physical, but it was a verbal altercation of where he told me one time to get my ass up and get the fuck out of his emergency department. He cussed a charge nurse because she assigned me to a pod that he was overseeing. And all of this came after administration sent me a nice letter that said we had to work together professionally and collaboratively. Essentially.
No.
There were other things that happened, like in the meeting about it. He said that I made, if you don't know this, we're recording now. I think we talked about it before we recorded. I'm openly gay. That's not easy to be an openly gay male in the South. And he said he makes grossly inappropriate homosexual comments. And my manager said, I'm going to stop you right there. There's a line and you're over it.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking about his conduct at this moment. And his sexuality has nothing to do with this, his sexual orientation. So no, we're not going into that.
Good.
When I had a meeting later with HR said, well, that was never in the incident report. And I said, oh, we'll pick the phone up and we'll call my manager, because if he's going to lie to you about it, he can lie to you about it while I'm sitting in the room with you. Oh, no, we don't need to do that.
Of course not.
Right. Because it's there.
Right.
It's there because you know that essentially I have an amazing lawsuit. and you don't want to give me anything. And had I known then what I know now, I would have sued. But
hindsight is always 20/20. It's like, oh,
hindsight is 20/20.
Why didn't I do that? Yep.
Yeah.
Or if I wasn't going to, why did I not just deck him?
Right.
At least
why did I not just
deserved it.
engage in it?
Yeah.
At that point, you would have been protecting yourself, so you would have had
absolutely
the right to do that.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting. I still have. So when I filed that incident report, I had my cell phone, right, and so I was taking pictures of all of the incident report screens. So I still have those pictures of where I filed the incident report, the letters that the hospital sent to me. I still have all of that. He still works there. I obviously do not.
Yeah.
But
that's crazy.
He is still employed and he is still a practicing physician. And I hope that I put him through enough red tape after doing it that he never, ever, ever considers putting his hands on a nurse again. But that happens. I mean, that happens. It happens to nurses all over the country. I am not an isolated event.
It does.
And
I've seen it.
And unfortunately, it costs more to replace a physician than it does to replace a nurse. So guess who no longer works there? And
exactly.
We're the
he still does.
The totem pole. We're the extendable ones. That's why.
Yep.
All
right.
So sharing that personal story. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about the future of nursing in your perception. So we've got nurses that graduated during the pandemic and post-pandemic. All the legal ramifications of that, and what does a reasonable and prudent nurse look like today compared to the past? I know that's a lot.
Yeah. Again, it's okay. And again, I'll say this, I'm not a lawyer, right? This is not legal advice. But in 3 years, I can charge you for it. It's an interesting concept, right? And it's a concept that I've looked at as an LNC many times. I was lucky that I came out of nursing school in 2014. I got my license in 2015. The nurses who precepted me had been nurses for 25 plus years. I had excellent preceptors who I was lucky, essentially. That's what I'm saying. I was lucky. I had nurses who, to this day, I would let take care of me, my family, anyone. Phenomenal examples of what a nurse looks like, a bedside nurse looks like. Fast forward, and now you've got intra-pandemic nursing students who are doing clinicals on a simulated game, who are not touching patients. And then they graduate and they come out and they're introduced to nursing and expected to acclimate, but they're given a preceptor who has less than a year's of experience themselves. And I called this, I said this many times, and my college professor told me, you need to coin that term. I need you to write some type of something and phrase this. Nurses who were at the end of their career, who were working because they wanted to work, not because they had to work, left. They're like, I'm not doing this. You don't have PPE for me. You're telling me to wear a garbage bag,
right,
and I've got 500, 600K sitting in my retirement. Peace out. I am not doing this. And so they all left the bedside. So all you have to train these individuals are new graduates. So from an LNC perspective, what does this look like for me is, how do I evaluate the standard of care? Yes, we have a scope of practice of nursing. Each state has one, right? We have legal statutes that govern nursing practice in every state. We have a licensing body, but remember that the NCLEX only tests the minimal competence of a nurse with 1 month of experience, or at least I think that's what it was when I took it. We're not looking to see if this is the smartest nurse who's ever went to nursing school. We're looking for a minimal competence to care for a patient, and it's all knowledge based. It's not skill based. There's no skills portion to the NCLEX. So, essentially anybody can memorize information. It's harder to apply it, but anybody can memorize things if they work hard enough at it. So from an LNC perspective, I look at, if I have a nurse who's done something that they fully had no idea was not within the standard, and then you start looking at their background. This is more for a defense side of things, right? Defending the nurse, not on the plaintiff side of suing the nurse, but on the defense side. I had a nurse who had subpar education because they went to nursing school during the pandemic. They never touched a patient. They played a video game. And as we all know, there's nothing about a video like a video game
Not the same.
in
It's
nursing
too
practice.
hands-on, yeah.
Right.
Regardless of whatever research we skewed to say it was so that we could do it, right? Like
Right.
it's not the same.
Right.
Then they were trained by a nurse who had less than a year of experience, who themselves have really no idea yet how to be a nurse because they just got out. You should have a 6-month orientation as a new graduate. So I get you through your 6 month of orientation. I'll let you practice for 6 months. And I say, oh yeah, and by the way, here, teach this new person. You don't even know how to be a nurse yet. And so you have this whole sequela of subpar education. And that's not necessarily the practitioner's fault. It's not the nurse's fault that they,
Right.
grew up in the pandemic. So how do you hold them to that legal standard? How do I hold them to the same legal standard of, say, myself, who went to an excellent nursing school, who had amazing preceptors, who has practiced for 14 years, I've not been in nursing for 14 years, but I've been in healthcare for 14 or 15 years. I've been a nurse for now 9 going on 10. How do you compare those two practices? We grew in very different environments.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that as a legal world, right, in my legal LNC world, that we've even talked about that as a legal nurse consultant world, because
I don't
you
think
don't
we
see
have
medical
that I'm
malpractice
aware of.
cases usually. No, I don't think we have either. And you don't see cases that come up until 2 to 5 years, right, after the incident occurred typically. So we're just now going to start seeing intra-pandemic cases where this may come up, where we have to look at, was the nurse, did the nurse violate the standard of care? And if so, did they do it maliciously, recklessly? One, as you know, RaDonda got tried with recklessness. That was one of the things that it was. Her behavior wasn't intentional, but it was reckless. Well, in order for behavior to be reckless, you should have known how to do it properly and then chose to have done it not in the proper manner.
Right.
So what does that look like if you were never taught proper, skill sets or
Right.
proper knowledge? I really think that we're going to get into an area where it muddies the waters. And as you know, Erica, your son's in law school, I'm in law school. We talk a lot about torts. And I do think there are patients who are entitled to compensation for things that we have done to them in a hospital setting. They lose their life, they lose a limb, those things happen. And it's because it's sometimes at the hands of a nurse, sometimes at the hands of a provider, sometimes at the hands of a respiratory therapist, and their families deserve compensation. But on the defense side of that, we're getting into an era of having to look at, is this nurse to blame? Or is it a larger system failure that comes back to the environment and the product that produced this nurse? So it's an interesting concept. It is super interesting. And then so fascinating. And I think moving forward, we're going to see more of this, because what we're seeing, right? And listen, this is all anecdotal at the bedside. I get research. I see it every day. I see it on both sides. That's why I don't sometimes believe it, right? I see research that says there's a massive nursing shortage. I see research that says there's not a nursing shortage. There's just a lack of practicing nurses. I see research that say do this at the bedside. I see research that says this is ineffective at the bedside. You go either way, right? You have to take research, I say this lovingly, with a grain of salt. You have to kind of take it considering the whole body of it and come to like a well-rounded view of it. But what I see is nurses leaving the bedside as quickly as they can. So this diminishing phenomenon of diminishing experience looks to be perpetual.
Yeah.
That this is just where we're at as an industry from this point forward. You have nurses who come out, they're so excited to be a nurse. They get to the bedside, they become a punching bag, which that's a whole nother story for everybody known to man. The patient's mad at you, administration's mad at you, lab's mad at you, radiology's mad at you, the patient's family's mad at you, the police are mad at you. Like, there's no one supporting you. You just are the punching bag for everybody. And they say, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to practice this in this environment. And they either leave the profession as a whole, or they go into a role that's outside of the bedside. So when you look at that from an LNC perspective or from a legal perspective, you have to come back to, and this is what I've said at hospitals, and we'll talk a little bit, I'm sure, more about my experience here in a little bit, but where I have said to administration, we have to develop, because what I'm going to ask in court as a testifying expert or what I'm going to recommend my lawyer to ask in cross-examination is, post-pandemic, has your hospital it placed any emphasis on education of new practicing nurses? That differed from the pre-pandemic. Because what hospitals are going to say is, oh yeah, we have a nurse residency program. Did that exist pre-pandemic? Well, yeah, it did. How have you changed that to meet the intra and the post-pandemic era of nursing? Well, we've not. Well, it's obviously different. So if you've not done that, then there's negligence on the part of the hospital, right? I'm going to ask those hard questions. And so I've said numerous times, as an industry, we have to, from a managerial and leadership perspective, bolster the growth of these nurses and truly invest in education, because the education that these nurses are getting formally is not the same education that I received. And the preceptorship that they're getting at the bedside is not the same that I got.
Yeah.
So to save ourselves from litigation, the nurse and the organization, we have to bolster support, and that comes in various different ways. Psychological support, because being a nurse is tough.
Yeah.
Nursing is a tough profession. So, more EAP involvement, of more psychological help for nurses, more availability to that. There's some organizations who don't even have that available. So having that availability of therapy, getting to talk to people about that, the education services, truly espousing time off to promote a work-life balance, breaks at work. These are all things that we're not seeing, right? These are all things that, as an industry as a whole, we're not seeing those. So you have nurses who are trained at subpar levels, getting subpar education when they acclimate to bedside practice in subpar environments, and we expect them to provide exceptional care. That is an unrealistic expectation. Like, we have to come to this conclusion that as an industry, what we're doing is not working. We have to change that, or else there's not going to be a healthcare industry. There's not going to be bedside nurses.
Right.
I know, like, this came anecdotally as well. I didn't see the research on it, but I was told, I don't know that this is true, but 2 years ago, I think, for the first time in Kentucky history, there were less applicants to nursing school than nursing seats available. That never happens. Nursing was a super competitive program. I was told that. I won't put money on that, right? Just take that with a grain of salt. But that's what I was told by someone who was close to that knowledge.
I hate that, because people are getting scared. They're hearing all the stories about nurses leaving. And that's why I think I've asked Erica that a few times and have wondered. I'm like, when are we going to start seeing that? Like, those numbers going down? Because I hear from young nursing students that are like in nursing school thinking about just getting out of nursing school. You know what I mean? Like, they're crazy stuff. So that's gotta be something that's starting to turn around too. I would expect.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
And I don't even recommend. I tell people now, because they say, I think that was one of my questions on the list, Erica, do you recommend people going to nursing school? And my new answer to that is this. First of all, have you ever worked in healthcare? Do you know what you're getting into? Have you ever worked as a nursing assistant or a scribe or even an ER registration clerk? Or have you ever worked in healthcare, period, where you actually get to see what it looks like from an inside perspective? And if that answer is yes, then I say, then do you know that nursing is your passion? Right? Do you see this and think, this is what I want to do? This is what I've always wanted to do? Because it was my passion. It's still my passion in a sense. Like, I still wish I could be the nurse that I want to be. It's just the environment limits it.
Isn't that
frustrating? Oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
So frustrating. So I tell people, if you don't know that nursing is your passion, I cannot recommend it as a profession.
Good answer.
It's not something that I can say, you need to go into this because it is fantastic. You're going to be completely fulfilled.
Even if it is your passion, they're going to suck that passion out of you. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that jokingly, but do you realize honestly what the culture of nursing is right now? Do you know what you're getting yourself into?
Right.
You have all of those questions answered and you still want to do it, then hey, go for it. But people ask me, are you going to go back to bedside? And my answer is not right now. Not the way things are now. Nope.
Yeah.
I won't.
Absolutely.
It's
I told Erica today, I'm in law school, and because I have all this free time, I just signed up to take real estate classes. It's because I'm limited. My passion is dimmed, right? That light that I have for nursing
Yeah.
that I love has been snuffed out. Someone just took a little candle snuffer and said, "Oh, that's cute." We don't want to see that anymore.
That's how it feels.
It's rough. I mean, it does. Nursing has transitioned. I love what I do. I love getting to take care of people. I love getting to affect lives and quality of life. I love giving people hope. I love giving people support in some of the most vulnerable times of their lives. But when you feel as if you're investing into a profession that's not investing into you as a professional, you become really dim and really jaded really quickly.
Yeah.
That's what they say. You're investing into a profession that, that they're not giving it back. They're not investing back into you. And that's where this whole, I call it like like you're saying, putting your light out. That's what happens. Is you just feel like, how am I going to give so much when nobody's giving even a smidge of that back to me?
Absolutely. I use this analogy. I think actually Eric and I talk regularly. We have like 3-hour conversations when we both just need to vent. And so I spoke with her lately and I use this analogy and she's like, "Oh, I love that." I told this to a senior executive one time as I was quitting a job. I said, "Have you ever seen someone drown?" And she just kind of looked at me and I said, "It's amazing because they always muster up enough strength to get their hand above water." And they could literally be in the middle of the ocean. But when their hand breaks the surface, they pray and hope that someone is above that surface to pull them out so that they don't drown. And what I've been doing, and in essence, what I think the profession is currently doing, is we have been treading water for so long that our head is now under. And every time we muster up enough strength to get our hand above the surface, we see people standing there, right? We see these people who can effectuate change. We see them above the surface. And instead of grabbing our hand and pulling us up, they pat us on the hand and say, "You're doing great. Keep treading."
Yep.
Look at
until we drown.
You're amazing. Look at you take
like
10 med surge patients. So good.
Yeah. You're doing great.
I love that
we'll buy you
analogy.
pizza.
Yeah, how do you do that? Anyways, I got to get back to my office. Bye.
Yeah. I want to put you on the spot for a second and read you something.
Okay.
And this is along the lines of a generational gap between nurses, which is something that I've always been super passionate and interested in. I think there needs to be a lot more research into that. But this is a post recently that I came across, and I would just like your knee-jerk reaction to this. So I'm going to read it to you, okay? I am disturbed by what I'm reading about going to work in inclement weather. When you were in school, you should have been educated about essential personnel in Nursing 101. I'm sorry if your school was happy to take your money and not address this concept, but we as nurses are considered essential personnel just like EMT, firefighters, police. I'm reading a lot about how we shouldn't have to drive in inclement weather and we should stay home as our families come first. If you have an issue with this, then you are in the wrong profession. Yes, you as a nurse are called on sometimes to be the hero. If you can't do the work, then you need to go work in a doctor's office or something else. If you want the hospital environment, then go in early before the storm and pack your bag. Our generation did what former nurses did. We saved lives, not took them. If you are worried about your license constantly, then you are at the wrong place. Thoughts?
Wow.
That's disgusting. First of all, the language of that is 100% inflammatory and gaslighting.
Yes. That's exactly what I was thinking. Gaslighting.
You just attempted to guilt a nurse into risking their life, or you're trying to guilt nurses into risking their life. Do I think that there are pearls of truth in that essentially someone has to be at the hospital, right? Someone has to take care of individuals. We are humans taking care of humans. And do I think that there is some level of a professional responsibility as a nurse to try and plan or to ensure that you can make your shift? Because on the other end of that, you'll hear me a lot talk about the product. And unfortunately, my product is not a burger. My product has a heartbeat and breathes.
Yeah.
Like that that is what I give you is life, essentially. And so I do think that there is a professional responsibility of formulating a plan and attempting to get there. But there is never a job on the face of this planet that is worth risking your own life. That is the only thing that you have.
Thank you.
And it is very limited.
Yep.
And so if you made a plan and that plan didn't work, I take the little wrist smack, right? Take the hand smack. I'm sure Erica will reveal more about me here at the end. Your manager can put on some scrubs.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. So let's reveal. Let's reveal the real Matthew Garvey. I did not.
Oh, yes, there's more.
I did not give all of your impressive accolades at the beginning, but you have a veritable alphabet soup that comes after your name, and I'm always joking that you're running out of room on your business cards. So I'm just going to read.
It's not a joke anymore.
DNP, MBA, RN, EMTB, CCRN, CEN, TCRN, QRS, LMNOP, and all the rest. And in law school. In law school.
That's amazing. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
I'm very proud. Honestly, that's a lot of work. That's a lot.
Thank you. It is. It has been. And it's interesting that Erica asked me this question. I have a feeling she chose it for me because I'm at the bedside now, but I've spent the last 4 to 5 years of my career in leadership. Mm-hmm. So because I was inspired to do such by things such as getting assaulted by a provider, right? Yeah. To make that change. Now, I've been in most of my leadership positions short periods of time because I'm vocal. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily what administrators like to hear. They don't like someone who speaks up. However, I do, and I'll never not do that. Obviously this was written by a nursing leader. It's disgusting. It's inflammatory. It is gaslighting. Mm-hmm. What this nurse should have said is, yes, there is a professional responsibility to attempt to make it into work. Here is what the hospital organization is doing and their emergency response plan that you should work inside of, or that can assist your plan to make sure you get here. But if you cannot, and even if you were just silent on this aspect of it, I as an administrator, I will always, or as a nursing leader, I will always tell my staff, I never want you to risk your life. Period.
Yeah.
Same in with aggressive patients. If a patient's trying to hurt you, let them walk out. There's police. There are people who get paid hazard pay to do this.
Right.
Right. We never signed that agreement. So if someone is in their right mind, like there's obviously in situations where there's Alzheimer's, that kind of thing, psychosis, where yes, we are subjected to it. But if a patient's in their right mind and they're threatening you, see you later. Let them go.
Yeah.
Walk out. It is not worth my life.
That comes with experience. And it's kind of what we were talking about before. New nurses easily get intimidated, unfortunately. And the gaslighting leads you to believe, like you were saying, that A, you're going to get in trouble for walking out, or B, I'm going to stick here and make sure that they're okay because I know my administration is going to take care of me. They're going to have my back. They're going to see me through this. And none of that is true, or it rarely is. None of that is true. And you live and you learn, unfortunately.
And most leaders won't tell you that. Most leaders won't tell you the truth. They tell you what they want you to hear so that you can be at work.
Oh yeah, of course.
And you do more with less. That's the new lean model of healthcare that we are in. Do more with less.
It is.
And don't say anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sad.
Any parting words, advice for nurses these days, whether they are new nurses or they've been around a minute?
Yeah, just a real simple advice is find a Jessica who works at your organization, or find an Erica who works at your organization, or find a Matt who works at your organization. Find people who are not scared to be an advocate, who are not scared to be a voice, people who can support you and empower you as a professional. Sometimes you can find that in administration. I know of one CNO who I love dearly. She is one of my best friends. She was my mentor for my DNP. She's absolutely phenomenal. She is a vocal nurse as well. She got to where she's at over a very slow, long period of time, but she is absolutely phenomenal. She's an anomaly. That normally doesn't happen.
It
You
doesn't.
normally don't find people like me, like Jessica, like Erica in administrative roles. So find those mentors at the bedside or in whatever realm you're in, right? If you're in home health, wherever you're at, find a mentor who is not afraid to support you, not afraid to empower you, and not afraid to speak up for the profession and to say, this is wrong. This is wrong. We're not going to do this. This is wrong. Or especially if you're a bedside nurse, you're going to call that provider back and tell them that they are coming to the bedside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you're going to call and tell them it's not a question. You're coming, you're on call. The patient's sick. You're going to be here. I'm going to chart it that way, or I'm going to go up the chain of command.
Yeah.
Call the house administrator who calls whoever.
Mm-hmm.
I will enact the chain of command unless I see you at the bedside in
Amen.
15 minutes.
Amen. Exactly.
Like, you're going to have to find those people who hype you up, talk you up, and say, if nobody else in this building has your back, I got you.
You know, the sad part is that people like us intimidate administration, and then that's when they find a way to try to get us out. That's
Listen,
I know me and Erica.
I just interviewed
that before, but you know, the people that are the ones that are the spokespeople for the unit, or I've been through all of that. They try to find a way to get you out of there because they don't want you to spread that information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just interviewed for a leadership position. Erica knows this because we talked about it and I called her an event. And the CNO chose to go get her oil changed instead of attending my interview in person. And then the job was given to someone who didn't meet the minimum job qualifications. Amazing nurse. Like, it's nothing against her. It has everything to do with who they want in positions and how they want to position themselves.
I talked to Erica.
Has nothing to do. Yeah. Has nothing to do with what's going to be best for the organization.
Right.
Best for the patients. It's all about who's going to do this. Yes. Yeah,
yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Of course I support you. Yes.
Something happens when most people go into minutes. It's like they get brain zapped. Like they turn into this like robot that's like soulless and they're just like on autopilot. And I would say for the most part, there are exceptions, like you were saying. I don't want to say every person in leadership is awful. There are some good ones, but
absolutely
the majority, I don't know what happens. I can't imagine they were like that their whole life, but
I can tell you. I can tell you what happens.
I think there's an element of. You tell your opinion, Erica, and then I'll quickly say mine.
Yeah, this is a phenomenon I witnessed firsthand because when I was first promoted from bedside to a nurse manager, they did a hospital-wide restructuring. And so there was several of us that were promoted at the same time from bedside to our first management position. And I can tell you, all of us went into it with the right motivation, wanting to affect change, wanting to, be the catalyst and be there for their staff and, all the right things. And I witnessed every last damn one of them practically, one by one, fall by the wayside and become that nurse manager that is, a caricature, right? That is the meme that we've all seen and had to deal with, unfortunately. The pressure that is put on lower mid management is an impossible situation. And I'm not here to defend it or compare it because, nothing comes close to what frontline staff does. But I will tell you that the pressure put on you at that position is impossible and it is unbearable. You are given little to no power. But yet you are expected to move mountains and you are getting it from both directions. You're getting it from admin down and you're getting it from bedside staff up, and it all stops with you. I know that I personally, in that transitionary time, I was brought into rooms with my CNO, with my ACNO, where doors were locked and I was threatened and they were in my face. And I could tell you a million stories. The pressure is immense, and you are told in no uncertain terms, you either will comply or we will find someone else to take your place. And so it really becomes like survival of the fittest, and it's, do I want to keep my job or do I want to be fired? And that's it. That's it. And so when you are beaten down long enough, consistently enough, you eventually get to a point where you just give up.
And the only thing I would add to that, that's all exactly what I was going to say, is that you're pressured into that. You're placed in a pressure cooker, essentially, and you're cooked down into that version of a leader that they expect you to be. And then I will say that what I've noticed is, when I went from a leadership position back to the bedside, I took a $40,000 pay cut.
Yeah.
Leaders are paid well.
Yeah.
And they're paid well to entice you to be corporate friendly.
Yeah,
that's true.
So
and it's hard to give that up.
Make when I make $120,000 a year, or whatever it may be, that's an abstract number I just pulled out of the air. But when I make $120,000, it's way harder for me to say no to the person who writes that check as it is if I made $78,000 and I could say no to that person because my next job's also going to pay $70,000. Like, there's a huge loss when you go from leadership back to the bedside, in just salary. And they use that as a manipulation tool. Like Erica said, if you don't comply, then you're fired, or you'll go back to the bedside and you'll make a charge nurse's salary.
And we're going to take away all your seniority if you go back to bedside. We're going to take all that away. You're going to be back on night shift. You're going to have the worst schedule as if you're a new grad.
PTO.
Yep. Yeah. It's bad.
Staff PTO. You're no longer going to get the leadership PTO plan. You're no longer going to get the employee stock plan. You
get nothing.
They use all those things, right? You get nothing.
Yeah.
And I've never worked in a job where I got a bonus, but you're also not going to get a bonus.
So every week, Matt, we do give away an enema award, and it's just to somebody in nursing that deserves an enema. That's the best way we could describe it. Just somebody that's horrible and that deserves to have a Roto-Rooter or something. We don't know. A deep cleansing because they've got
coffee
evil
grounds,
stuff inside of them.
Soap suds.
So, feeling who you're giving the enema to this week, but I could be wrong, but I think I know, Erica. So let's give our award away.
Okay, so I've recently been talking about a nursing strike at Kapiolani Medical Center in Hawaii. And it's really a three-way tie between Kapiolani Medical Center management admin, the Honolulu Police Department, and their news network there, Hawaii News Now. But if I had to pick one, because they're all corrupt, right? Clearly. But if I had to pick one, it would go to Kapiolani Medical Center and admin there that are clearly corrupt, clearly colluding with local news and police department, and simply not treating their nurses well. Those nurses are being forced to work overtime on the daily, 15, 16 hours. A cost of living in Hawaii is astronomical. All these nurses have 2, 3, 4 jobs just to be able to pay bills, and no one can afford to buy a house. Their ratios are out of this world, and it's a children's hospital. So these are babies and children and NICU and our most valuable patients, right, that we need to take care of. And Kapiolani Medical Center, this enema award of the week goes to you.
Bravo. All right, Matthew, back to where can people find you and follow you and learn all about you? Give us your handles, your website, what you got.
Yeah, so TikTok is a very vocal nurse. LinkedIn is, I think, Matthew Garvey. I think. All of my personal, you can follow me on all of my personals as well. I don't have a lot of business socials at the moment. That may change, but it's Matthew Paul Garvey on all of my socials. And then you can also visit my website. I do legal nurse consulting and also education in that. My website is more geared to the nurse consulting side, but there's a contact form on there. You're welcome to get a hold of me through it as well. My website is Garvey, which is GARV as in Victor, EY, CES.com. So you can go there. My email is Matthew.Garvey @GarveyCES.com. Erica, I shortened it for you. So you can add me anywhere, reach out to me, contact me anywhere, socials, that's fine. If you're going on the Nurse Blake cruise, I don't know if any of your podcast listeners, I'm sure a lot of them do.
Come
Maybe.
say hi to Matthew. He'll be there. Yeah.
Come say hi to me. Come see me. I'll be teaching. Come to my presentations.
And partying at
if you
night.
just want to
Presenting.
Exactly.
Partying at night.
Exactly. If you want to just talk, vent, whatever you want to do, reach out. I'm here, and yeah, I'm here for you all. I'm here for the profession.
It's so nice meeting you. Thank you, and I'm excited to see you on the cruise. We're gonna have a good time. We'll
Great time. I can't wait.
We'll be back again on Nurses Uncorked. We've got a lot more to talk about. So until next time,
Sure.
everybody, we'll see you next week on Nurses Uncorked.